Said email had her travel info and the resort's name, but not the owner's. A uniformed attendant approached with her luggage. Rather than handing it over as she expected, he offered a friendly smile and gestured toward the limo. "Right this way." She followed him to the car and slid into yet another display of luxury. More leather, more champagne, and endlessly stunning views enhanced the scenery on either side as the car slipped silently toward a palatial resort in the distance. When the ride drew to a stop, she exited to discover the huge building sprawled in every direction at once. Its stark white facade so at one with the landscape that it appeared part of the beach itself, like a giant sand castle surrounded by lush tropical fauna. And men, hot, shirtless men. She studied the small group that stood with their backs to her, noting that the arrival of the limo hadn't yet drawn their attention. One man was clearly the ringleader of the group, not just because he radiated power, but because he held the full attention of the others. And the magnetism went well beyond his captive audience, because even from a distance, he snagged her attention. Or maybe it was the fit of his jeans. She had always preferred a power suit, but she had never seen anything sexier than the way that particular ass molded denim. The man attached to the ass in question stood shirtless, droplets of moisture skating in rivulets down his back. Sweat-darkened hair hung 2 weeks past time for a trim, but the rear view was all the more enticing for it. Get a grip. It was the heat, had to be the heat, because she was so not standing there trying to surreptitiously take back the breath he'd stolen. She was a grown woman, one who hadn't seen anything so sexy in ages. A full moment passed before she realized the view had changed. She blinked into focus a set of 8-pack abs. A line of hair traveled south into a waistband that had settled tantalizingly low on lean hips. She'd have been content to let her gaze languish there, if not for the fact that the construction noise had ceased. Her attention shifted upward, hitching to a pair of blue-green eyes that put the Caribbean to shame. Gorgeous eyes. Eyes that raked over her like she was on the dessert menu. He straightened, his cerulean gaze taking a lazy tour of her body, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. Corded arms shifted easily, the muscles there as defined as those of his back. She caught a glimpse of a single tattoo marking one bicep. Strands of dark hair fell across his forehead, and below it, a 5 o'clock shadow framed sensual lips. Lips that eased into a smile. "Miss Elliot, I presume?" A beat passed before she realized he spoke to her. The fake name sounded unnatural in his deep, husky drawl. About as unnatural as she felt standing in paradise, wearing sensible heels and tailored pants. She itched to get her hands on the sundresses she'd packed. She itched to get her hands on that man. Though her heart beat unevenly and she had broken a sweat that had nothing to do with the equatorial sun, she pasted on a bright smile. "You presume well." He set down his hammer and wiped his hands on a nearby towel. A backward glance at the other men sent them back to work, setting off a cacophony of noise as he walked the short distance to join her on the path. He paused in front of her, his gaze touring her unapologetically, and she gave as good as she got. She may have been back on the market less than a week, but her fiancé had insisted on marriage before sex, a fact made all the more interesting after his recent exposure. Zoe hadn't exactly been broken up over the idea of waiting, and now that the sordid pictures were circulating the internet, she realized she hadn't missed much. In retrospect, her affection for her ex had been constructed more from a need to please her father than of her own interest. She and her ex-fiancé shared similar, if disconnected, goals that made